On the night of our nuptials, I unexpectedly acquired the ability to read minds. Shunhung leisurely wiped his abs, casting a frosty gaze in my direction. Is my wife looking at me? If you don't take the initiative, I might just put on my clothes. Truly, I will. He slowly donned his attire and settled in front of the computer, searching for how to encourage my wife to take the initiative. I was rendered speechless. Is this truly the same aloof CEO? I found it perplexing that, despite his outward appearance of stoic indifference, his inner thoughts were so exuberantly audacious. Standing a short distance from Shunhung, I observed him furrowing his brow in concentration as he stared at the computer screen. To the unknowing observer, he might have seemed to be grappling with a challenging task. Who would have imagined that a cool and commanding tycoon would resort to searching online because his newlywed wife had not yet touched his abs? I couldn't help but let out a sigh and tentatively called out to him. Shunhung? Why is my wife addressing me by my full name? We are married, so why does it still feel so distant? His thoughts raced ahead of his lips, and he turned to face me, his expression still frosty. What is it? To be honest, I was quite unaccustomed to this stark contrast. Should we go to bed? I pointed towards the bed, cautiously inquiring. After all, this was our wedding night. Regardless of his restrained demeanor, a semblance of tradition must be upheld. My wife wants to sleep with me. Could it be that she is also feeling something for me? Indeed, abs are truly the most effective. I must raise my assistant's salary tomorrow. Shunhung nodded with reserved elegance, uttering a succinct sound of acknowledgement. As I gazed at his impassive expression, my mind was inundated with his exuberant inner monologue, causing my features to contort slightly. If this continued, I was uncertain whether he would experience a mental fracture, but I was bound to lose my sanity. With a sigh, I removed my shoes and climbed onto the bed, finding a suitable position to lie down on my side, preparing for sleep. Oh my wife is going to sleep. How delightful. After waiting for over a decade, I have finally married her. La la la. Upon hearing this thought, I abruptly opened my eyes, staring incredulously at Shunhung, who was lifting the covers to settle in beside me. My unblinking gaze seemed to make him somewhat uneasy. What are you staring at instead of sleeping? His brows knitted slightly, his expression revealing a hint of unease. Had it not been for the overwhelming volume of his thoughts nearly giving me a concussion, I might have genuinely believed he found me intolerable. Although I had always harbored such a notion, yet now, it seemed that might not be the case after all. 2. As the saying goes, marriage is a significant affair governed by parental authority and the matchmaking of others. Thus, my union with Shunhung unfolded in such a manner. My father and his father were comrades during their youth, and it is said that Shunhung's father nearly lost his life on the battlefield while rescuing my father. In gratitude for this life-saving favor, my family now seeks to repay it through my hand in marriage. Consequently, under the auspices of our fathers, Shunhung and I embarked on a whirlwind marriage. In my heart, I had always believed that he married me merely to placate his family. As for myself, I was undeniably drawn to Shunhung, for he embodied every aspect of my ideal partner. Particularly, his handsome visage commanded attention, turning heads as we strolled down the street. Not only that, but Shunhung was a prodigy in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. His exceptional demeanor made him the quintessential perfect child in the eyes of parents. My father extolled Shunhung's virtues, assuring me that our families were well acquainted and that I would not face hardship in my new home. In summary, Shunhung was the epitome of an ideal spouse. Suddenly, a memory surfaced from my middle school days when I had wept outside my home, fearing punishment for poor exam results. It was then that I encountered Shunhung, who was visiting relatives nearby with his parents. Clad in black overalls, he resembled a prince straight from a fairy tale. He offered me a lollipop and comforted me, urging me not to cry. That day remained etched in my memory. However, upon seeing him again in later years, I found him distant and aloof, a stark contrast to the amiable boy I once knew. In high school, his family moved closer to mine. During his college entrance examinations, I was preparing for my own. Throughout my high school years, I often heard teachers praise him and learned of various legends surrounding Shunhung from my classmates. He was a legendary figure, both the campus heartthrob and a formidable presence. Perhaps influenced by him, I dedicated myself to my studies and was fortunate enough to gain admission to the same university he attended. However, just as I began my freshman year, he announced his plans to study abroad. Before his departure, he chanced upon our class monitor confessing his feelings for me. On that occasion, he earnestly advised me, "Romance can hinder your studies. Do not squander your precious time." I felt gratitude towards him for that advice. It indeed prompted me to prioritize my education over romantic entanglements. For a time, I regarded Shen Heng as my role model, fully immersing myself in my studies. Yet, in retrospect, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. Shen Heng's voice interrupted my wandering thoughts. My wife is gazing at me. Could it be that she harbors some intentions? Should I perhaps entertain a glimmer of hope? How exhilarating! I glanced at Shen Heng, who lay expectantly beside me, and a perplexing thought began to blossom in my mind. Could it be that Shen Heng had harbored feelings for me since childhood? Surely not. A mischievous curiosity stirred within me, prompting me to test his affections. Thus, I propped myself up on the bed and leaned slightly closer to him. I overheard his excited inner musings. My wife is so near. Could it be that she wishes to kiss me? Should I lean in closer? Goodness. Was he truly such a romantic? I merely leaned in, and he seemed to have conquered himself. I directly inquired, "Will you kiss me?" 3. In that instant, I witnessed Shen Heng's expression freeze, his eyes widening in astonishment as he gazed at me. Observing his continued silence, I pondered whether my words had genuinely startled him. Was it merely a kiss that rendered him so innocent? How dull. Deflated, I prepared to rise, muttering, "If you don't want to, then so be it." Before I could sit up, he suddenly grasped my arm. His voice was barely audible, and a faint blush crept across his cheeks. Me? How adorably shy he appeared. Who was the real girl here? Noticing my lack of reaction, Shen Heng's voice grew slightly louder. I do. He lifted his gaze, his deep, dark eyes locking onto mine, causing me to feel a flutter of anxiety. Oh no. I had only been jesting, and now he seemed intent on taking it seriously. I felt a rush of warmth. Under the heat of Shen Heng's gaze, I swallowed hard. The next moment, his puzzled thoughts echoed in my mind. Why hasn't she acted yet? Did she not hear what I just said? Hurry, my wife. I can hardly wait. Despite his outward composure, his inner fervor was undeniable. Clearing my throat, I resolved that avoidance was not my style. So, I covered his eyes with my hand and timidly pressed my lips against his. I distinctly felt Shen Heng stiffen, but I was too flustered to care, quickly rolling over to face away from him. What had I done? I lamented my own impulsiveness. As I savored the moment, a sigh emerged from behind me. Why was it just a peck? Am I not proactive enough? Or perhaps I lack charm? I couldn't help but chuckle, burying my face in the blankets, my cheeks blooming with laughter. Shen Heng was simply delightful, perhaps due to the exhaustion from the wedding earlier. I soon fell into a deep slumber. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, I heard Shen Heng's murmurs beside me. Has my wife already fallen asleep? Oh, dear. I longed to hold her. Surely, I won't be discovered? What a chatterbox he was. I rolled my eyes, but the pull of sleep was irresistible. Just before succumbing to slumber, I suddenly felt enveloped in warmth. For the next morning, I awoke to find a handsome face looming closely above me. We were so near that I could kiss Shen Heng's lips with the slightest tilt of my head. I gazed at his long, curled eyelashes, marveling at my husband's good looks. He was so attractive, I could hardly resist the urge to steal a kiss. Just as I contemplated leaning in, Shen Heng's thoughts startled me. My wife is still holding me. She feels so soft and fragrant. I mustn't let her know I'm awake. Me? Was he still pretending? I pulled away from his embrace, causing him to slowly open his eyes. I found his feigned sleepy demeanor amusing, though I maintained an air of indifference. Without a word, he cast a fleeting glance at me before heading to the bathroom. His demeanor was as cold as ice. I questioned, what is going on? Did he think I was unaware of his thoughts, acting all grumpy? Sure enough, I soon heard Shen Heng's forlorn voice. Why isn't my wife holding me anymore? Is it because I look unappealing just after waking? It seems I have some sleep in my eyes, but that's beyond my control. I couldn't help it. I fell back onto the bed, laughing uncontrollably. However, when Shen Heng emerged, I quickly donned my mask of indifference once more. As I walked into the bathroom, I casually said, "Excuse me." At that moment, I caught a glimpse of the bewildered expression on Shen Heng's face, which was utterly delightful. I relished teasing him, especially since he often presented himself as an aloof ice prince. I leisurely squeezed toothpaste, only to hear Shen Heng's voice from outside the bathroom. Why does my wife seem so distant? She must be upset with me. What should I do? I couldn't help but smile. The contrast in his demeanor was simply adorable. After breakfast, we each headed to our respective workplaces. As I slipped on my shoes, I cast a glance at Shen Heng standing beside me, only to hear his inner turmoil. How I wish I could spend a little more time with my wife. But how should I broach the topic of escorting her to work? My wife is almost done putting on her shoes. I must concoct a decent excuse before that happens. I deliberately slowed my movements, curious to see how long Shun Hung could endure. Yet, this man truly was a bundle of nerves. He merely watched as I tied my shoelaces for 5 minutes, wrestling with his thoughts for just as long, without uttering a single word. Well, I had given up hope. "I'm off," I said, grabbing my bag and turning to leave. Shun Hung trailed closely behind, his mind still racing. If there ever came a day, I would quite like to present Shun Hung with an award. King of Blabber. Drama Queen. Upon arriving at the office, my supervisor promptly assigned me to lead a new project. While he claimed it was a significant responsibility, I perceived it more as a hot potato that no one else wanted to handle, thus it had fallen into my lap. I had little expectation until I glanced at the name of the company on the documents. Oh dear, what a coincidence. This was indeed Shun Heng's company. To be precise, it could also be considered mine, as it was a shared asset of our marriage. In response to my colleague's expressions of consolation, I feigned a look of distress. I shall not betray the trust the company has placed in me. However, I can only endeavor to do my best. Externally troubled, internally, I was already reveling in delight. After organizing the documents, I directly took a taxi to Shun Heng's company. Upon arriving at the front desk, I overheard some gossip about Shun Heng. What kind of woman do you think Mr. Shun likes? I'm genuinely curious. His ideal type must be a strong, elegant woman. Right? Strong and elegant? I glanced down at my athletic attire, lost in thought. Why concern yourself with the type of woman he likes? He wouldn't look our way anyway. But who knows? Haven't you seen those romantic dramas where the boss falls for an employee? Perhaps such a thing could happen to us too. The notion was delightful, yet reality was harsh. Shun Heng was already married. I waited in the lobby for about 15 minutes, during which 14 were spent listening to their various discussions about Shun Heng. I raised an eyebrow. Who would have thought that this seemingly aloof man had so many admirers? It seemed prudent for me to keep a watchful eye on my rivals. But then I paused. What was this? Why had I suddenly developed such a strong possessiveness over Shun Heng? Just as I was lost in contemplation, Shun Heng's assistant approached. Assistant Chen escorted me to the meeting area. Just as I was about to enter, I saw Shun Heng emerge from a conference room at the other end. From his appearance, it seemed he had just concluded a meeting. Just when I thought he would walk past me, he strode directly towards me. "Do you need something?" I barely had time to comment on his icy demeanor when I heard his heart exclaim. "Is my wife here just to see me? How touching! Truly, only my wife treats me the best in the world." Love-struck. I cleared my throat, meeting Shun Heng's expressionless face. Suppressing my laughter. "I'm here on behalf of our company regarding the previous project." In the next moment, I sensed his joy plummet. Surely my wife is here for business, yet also to check on me, right? Otherwise, why not send someone else? Indeed, love-struck minds are not the issue. It's the self-sabotage that proves most perilous. Shun Heng seemed to have other matters to attend to and, with a nudge from his assistant, departed. Soon after, I met with the project liaison and resumed negotiations between our two companies. Strangely, today as discussions unfolded smoothly, and I felt none of the difficulties my colleagues had mentioned. However, I didn't dwell on it, merely wishing to finalize the project swiftly. As our conversation reached a jovial climax, I suddenly heard a familiar voice. Why is my wife laughing so heartily? Let me see who she is with. The unexpected voice startled me into a shiver. I truly would be mortified. Was this what they called? Before you see the person, you recognize their voice? In the next instant, the conference room door was knocked open. Mr. Shun. The project manager beside me instantly lost a smile, rising to face Shun Heng. I pondered, was Shun Heng truly that intimidating? Turning my head, I encountered his frosty visage. All right, he did appear rather fearsome when not smiling, but it was merely a facade. Internally, he was a softie. Continue your discussion as if I am not present. With that, Shun Heng seated himself beside us. I was indifferent, but the project manager visibly tensed, laughing behind my back, yet now unable to utter a word. Perhaps he wishes to woo my wife in secret? Lacking any courage, were it not for his decent work ethic, I might have considered letting him go, wanting to steal my wife. Qin Xian, how could you chat about work yet giggle with another man? Shun Heng's inner monologue was quite the spectacle. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The conference room fell into an eerie silence as I watched the project manager wipe the sweat from his brow, his mouth tightly pressed. Did Shun Hung really need to intimidate him so? After all, this was one of his devoted employees. Since the project has been resolved, I shall not waste your time further. I took the initiative to break the standoff, rising with my documents to leave. The project manager stood as well. Then let us wish for a pleasant collaboration ahead. Since I have time tonight, how about we share a meal? I noticed his expression falter, instinctively glancing at Shun Hung. I believed he had merely spoken casually. Shun Hung, however, remained unfazed, his inner thoughts echoing again. Dinner? What dinner? You've only just met, and you wish to treat her to a meal. What's next, a date? What a scoundrel. Doesn't he have a wife? Why is he eyeing my treasure? I was taken aback by his sudden reference to treasure, nearly stumbling. Fortunately, Shun Hung swiftly reached out to steady me. Are you alright? His warm voice resonated above me, and I bit my lip. I'm fine. To avoid revealing any cracks, I quickly shrugged off his hand. Sure enough, Shun Hung began to sulk. Why did my wife push my hand away? Does she not like me anymore? I was speechless. What did this have to do with anything? After the project manager was ushered away by Shun Hung, we descended the stairs together. Along the way, many turned to glance at us, their prying eyes unmistakably filled with curiosity. I silently lamented. Thank goodness Shun Hung and I did not work at the same company. Otherwise, I could only imagine what rumors might circulate about me. However, Shun Hung seemed to revel in the attention. Look at us. Don't we make a splendid couple? No wonder she's my wife. Having her by my side truly brings honor. Could you please grasp the situation? Their gazes were clearly filled with gossip. Upon leaving the company, I noticed that Shun Hung still had no intention of departing, leading me to believe he wanted to see me off. That was fine by me. When the taxi arrived, I opened the door and took a seat, but before I could utter a word, Shun Hung followed me inside. What was going on? Was he truly planning to escort me back to the office? That seemed rather extravagant. What are you doing? I couldn't help but ask, only to receive his calm reply. Did we not agree to have a meal? Despite his seemingly icy exterior, his heart was ablaze. I raised an eyebrow and nodded like a little chick pecking at grain. Yes, a meal it is. After all, Shun Hung was footing the bill. It would be foolish not to eat. Once seated at the table, Shun Hung handed me the menu directly. I stole a glance at the prices and nearly dropped my eyes to the floor. This restaurant, appearing shabby from the outside, charged hundreds for a single dish. I glanced at Shun Hung's nonchalant demeanor. Well then, I wouldn't hold back. While ordering, Shun Hung even added several signature dishes. He coldly remarked, "These dishes are quite good. You should try them." Yet internally, he was filled with concern. Why did my wife only order a few dishes? She's already so slender. Is she still thinking of dieting? It truly pains my heart. Even if he genuinely cared for me, there was no need to order 10 dishes. However, it turned out Shun Hung had an excellent eye. Despite its unassuming appearance, the restaurant's cuisine was delectable. I ended up eating to the point of needing support to walk. After the meal, I bid farewell to Shun Hung and returned to our respective workplaces. When my colleagues saw that I had successfully secured the project, they eagerly inquired if I possessed any secret techniques. I merely smiled in silence. What could be so secretive? If I were to speak of it, it would likely trace back to the time my father was saved by Shun Hung's father on the battlefield. My supervisor expressed immense satisfaction with my work, painting a bright future for me while promptly booking my flight. It was a new business trip and even more challenging. Was this the fate of the proverbial nail that sticks out? I truly felt overwhelmed, but what could I do? I had no choice but to force a smile and accept the project. Later that evening, while packing at home, I happened to encounter Shun Hung returning from work. He stood at the doorway, and I could sense the tremor in his pupils. Why is my wife suddenly upset? Is she going back to her family? What on earth happened? Did she dislike the dishes ordered at lunch? What have I done wrong? I'm so scared. My motion to place clothes into my suitcase faltered slightly. I glanced at Shun Hung, who said I was going back to my family. This man truly had a penchant for overthinking. Seeing his eyes well up with tears, as if he were about to cry at any moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. Thus, I cleared my throat, straightened my posture, and addressed him. Well, our company has an urgent project requiring travel, so I returned early to pack. To prevent Shun Hung from overthinking, I opted to explain. Upon hearing this, his expression visibly relaxed. He responded with a simple, Yet internally, he was celebrating. My wife isn't going back to her family, she is still my wife. How delightful. But what kind of company is this? Why would they let someone go on a business trip so casually? There couldn't he be some lecherous male superior accompanying her? Could there? What if he calls her to his room in the dead of night? I found his imagination quite amusing. Observing Shun Heng's self-inflicted worry, I could sense his emotions were somewhat disheartened. After all, he was my husband and he genuinely cared for me. I approached him to comfort him. Rest assured, once the project is settled, I will return swiftly. I will be the only one attending, and the counterpart is also a woman. There won't be any danger. I softened my tone and reached out to gently touch his little finger. Shun Heng maintained his cold facade. I didn't care about his expression. Did he really think I was oblivious to his thoughts? Shun Heng's thoughts. My wife is actively explaining to me. Does she particularly care about my feelings? I'm so happy. My wife must have me in her heart. Then, Shun Heng looked down at me, his tone tentative. Are you worried I might be displeased? I nodded. You are my husband. Of course, I must consider your feelings. Though I know you're concerned about me traveling alone, rest assured, I am an adult. I can take care of myself, I added, noticing his expression shift from disappointment to brightness. You can contact me anytime. As I spoke, he still wore a cold expression. But deep down, he was already beaming with joy. Oh, how amusing. Did he truly believe I was unaware? I had him completely under my control, seeing me so agreeable. Shun Heng even began to push his luck. You must call me every day to report your safety. I nodded. All right. Perhaps this was truly Shun Heng's ulterior motive? After all, this clingy romantic was the type to start crying if he hadn't seen his wife for 10 minutes. The next morning, Shun Heng personally took me to the airport. As we drove, he stared ahead, seemingly calm while his mind was racing. My wife is traveling alone. Will she be safe? Should I accompany her? But if I do, will she think I'm being overbearing? I silently critiqued. Not necessarily. We are about to be apart. A day without seeing her feels like an eternity. What should I do? I think I'm already missing her. I felt a pang of impatience. Then come with me. Don't just think about it. Take some action. Yet, until we reached the terminal, Shun Heng maintained his aloof persona. I thought to myself, you're so distinguished, so exceptional. It serves you right to lose your wife for a few days. Feeling a bit petulant, I dragged my suitcase and turned to leave, but Shun Heng called out to me. For a moment, I felt a flicker of excitement. Instead, he simply instructed, be safe. His tone and demeanor were reminiscent of a stern elder. My father never spoke so seriously. Well, who could blame me for choosing such a husband? However, on the first night at the hotel, I still called Shun Heng to assure him of my safety. On the other end of the line, he surprisingly spoke more than usual. How is the hotel environment? Is the project progressing smoothly? If you encounter any troublesome issues, feel free to let me know. I chuckled softly. You're concerned about me? Just a few hours ago, he had pretended to be composed at the airport, and now he couldn't help himself? Shun Heng replied honestly. Perhaps it was the distance that made it difficult for me to hear his inner thoughts, leaving me unaware of what he was truly feeling at that moment. But that was of little consequence. After spending some time together, I have come to understand Shun Heng's character quite well. We exchanged a few more casual remarks, and before hanging up, I reminded him to eat on time, assuring him that I would return shortly. Shun Heng obediently agreed. We shared a moment of silence, with neither of us willing to end the call. Thus, we remained connected, listening to the gentle rhythm of each other's breaths. At that moment, there was a knock at my door, and a male colleague's voice called out, Qin Xian, shall we go down for a meal together? Coming, I replied, and after a few more words with Shun Heng, I ended the call. Without overthinking it, I grabbed my coat and stepped outside. Initially, this business trip was meant to be a solo endeavor, but my supervisor, concerned about my ability to manage alone, assigned a male colleague to accompany me without prior notice. It was only at the airport check-in that we crossed paths. I thought little of this minor detail and felt no need to explain it to Shun Heng. However, upon returning to the hotel later that evening, Shun Heng's call came as expected. The man on the other end hesitated before asking, What were you doing just now? Eating, I replied. Were you alone? No. I was with a colleague. Didn't you say you were the only one on this business trip? This exchange made it clear that Shun Heng's true concern was about the male colleague, albeit in a rather roundabout manner. I decided to directly address his unspoken doubts. He was also assigned last minute. He's essentially my subordinate, and besides, he's already married. What are you worried about? There was a slight pause on the other end. Just asking. Despite his nonchalant tone, I found it amusing. Though I could no longer hear Shun Heng's inner thoughts, I could only imagine he had probably wished ill upon my male colleague's entire family. I teasingly remarked, "Oh, I thought you were feeling jealous." I distinctly heard his breath falter on the line. Shun Hung fell silent, not sure whether he was more frustrated or utterly speechless. Glancing at the time, I realized it was still early, but maintaining this awkward tension with Shun Hung wasn't a viable option. I tentatively asked, "If there's nothing else, shall I hang up?" I was taken aback. Was everything truly all right for him to agree so readily? It seemed he was not in a hurry. Days passed swiftly, and I found myself on a 3-day business trip. Before I left, I had informed Shun Hung of the duration, so when I called him that morning, he likely assumed I would be returning soon. He even pretended to be serious and inquired if he should pick me up from the airport. It wasn't my intention to toy with him. Standing by the hotel window, I casually remarked, "The original 3-day itinerary has now turned into 5 days. And I will assess the situation afterward." "Understood," he replied, not asking any further questions. Yet I knew better. I could hear the irritation in his voice. I deliberately provoked him. "Darling, we haven't seen each other for 3 days, and I truly miss you." The silence on the other end was palpable, save for Shun Heng's slightly ragged breaths. "But it's getting late now. You should get some rest." I'll hang up. After placing my phone on the nightstand, I leapt onto the bed, chuckling into my blanket. I could vividly imagine the expression on Shun Heng's face at that moment. The following morning, I was awakened by a series of knocks at my door. Initially, I thought it was my male colleague inviting me to breakfast, so I donned my coat and made my way to the door. However, upon opening it, I was surprised to find Shun Hung standing there. Could he have mastered the art of teleportation? His dark eyes bore into my face as he took a step closer, asking, "What did you mean by what you said last night?" I looked up at him, still groggy from sleep, my mind racing to catch up. What did I say?" I could almost hear Shun Heng's inner thoughts. "Regardless, I'm here now. She certainly can't just send me away, can she?" I couldn't help but smile. Was this really the aloof Shun Hung that others perceived? I stepped closer, wrapping my arms around his neck. "Do you miss me?" Shun Hung remained silent, but his thoughts were brimming with excitement. "I miss her. I miss my wife so much." The intensity of his feelings was almost overwhelming. I playfully bit my lip, pretending not to hear him. "If you don't miss me, then I won't miss you either." With that, I withdrew my arms and turned to head back into the room. Shun Hung suddenly grasped my arm. "I do miss you," he affirmed. I stood on tiptoe and placed a quick kiss on his lips. Consider it a reward. Humph. I would have him wrapped around my finger in no time. Shun Heng's heart soared with joy. My wife kissed me. She really is soft and fragrant. It was worth rushing here overnight. However, I did not allow myself to be entirely consumed by the sweetness of our reunion. I changed my clothes and instructed him to wait in the room while I went out to discuss work. The project was nearly finalized, and today we would sign the contract, ensuring everything went smoothly. To celebrate, the partnering company invited us out for dinner. Since it was the client's initiative, my male colleague and I could hardly refuse. Yet, once seated at the dinner table, a few drinks were inevitable, though we kept it moderate. I still felt a bit tipsy. As I stood in the corridor, I encountered Shun Hung, who had come to fetch me. Ignoring the presence of others, he pulled me tightly into his embrace, refusing to let go. How could my wife be in such a state? She looked so enchanting like this. I longed to tease her. I was intoxicated, but not to the point of losing consciousness. "Thank you very much." I gazed up at Shun Hung, my fingers playfully tracing patterns on his chest, clearly teasing him. His eyes were slightly reddened, and the warmth of his palm felt almost scorching against my skin. Once we entered the hotel room, he pressed me against the door, showering me with kisses. Yet, instead of pushing him away, I wrapped my arms around him tightly. "Are we not pretending anymore?" I caught my breath while Shun Hung paused, slightly leaning back, his gaze filled with confusion. My hand rested over his heart, and I noticed the lipstick smudged on his lips. "I have always been able to hear your thoughts." In that instant, I saw disbelief flood his eyes. His heart raced, betraying his sudden vulnerability. I brushed against his shoulder as I walked into the room, shedding my coat. When I turned to look back, Shun Hung stood there, still in shock. My wife has always been able to hear my thoughts? Is this real? How embarrassing. I hope she isn't upset. No. I mustn't think like that. How utterly adorable he was. I couldn't help but feel a surge of affection. I called Shun Hung over, and he appeared like a well-behaved little koala, standing before me. I tugged at his tie playfully. "Do you like me?" My cheeks flushed lightly as I fixed my gaze on him, unflinchingly. After all, he was my husband. What was there to fear? If you can't say it, then forget it. Noticing his hesitation, I released the tie. I like you, he finally declared with certainty. Excellent. A fleeting moment of bravado led to my downfall the following morning, as I found myself kneeling the moment my feet touched the ground. In contrast, Shun Hung appeared remarkably refreshed. Even during breakfast, his gaze towards his male colleagues radiated warmth. It was unsettling. Once aboard the plane, Shun Hung held my hand firmly, drawing the attention of the flight attendants who cast curious glances in our direction. I felt a twinge of embarrassment and turned to see Shun Hung with his eyes closed. Feigning sleep, I thought to seize the moment and withdraw my hand, yet the instant I stirred, he tightened his grip. What a clever boy, pretending to slumber beside me. I even suspected that Shun Hung was consciously controlling his thoughts, aware that I could hear his silent musings, deliberately shielding them from my ears. However, it mattered little, for I had already discerned his intentions long ago. Upon returning home, Shun Hung took it upon himself to cook for me. I was taken aback to see him clad in a pink pig apron, skillfully chopping vegetables. My astonishment grew. Had he not seemed incapable of cooking? Sensing my confusion, Shun Hung chuckled. I know you have a penchant for good food, so I made it a point to learn how to cook just for you. When did this happen? I inquired, surprised. Surely, couldn't he have mastered this during my brief business trip? Judging by his deft movements, he must have practiced for several months. Turning down the flame on the stove, he approached me and said, Qin Xian. It was the first time he had addressed me so solemnly, causing my heart to skip a beat. In truth, I have harbored feelings for you for quite some time. You mentioned being able to hear my thoughts, so you must have sensed my affections. It was just that whenever we met, you seldom spoke to me, and I presumed you disliked me, which is why I never dared to confess my feelings until our parents orchestrated this matchmaking meeting. I initially thought you would refuse to marry me. I truly regret not having pursued a relationship with you sooner. He took my hand, gazing at me with profound sincerity. What about you? Do you feel the same? I shook my head. In that moment, I witnessed a shift in Shun Hung's expression. Just as he was about to feel a pang of disappointment, I stepped forward and embraced him. My feelings for you surpass mere affection. My cheek rested against his chest, feeling the powerful rhythm of his heartbeat. I couldn't help but chuckle. Are you truly that elated? Shun Hung wrapped his arms around me in return, lowering his head to gently kiss my forehead. You already know how I feel, don't you? Yes, I knew. Wait, what? I closed my eyes and concentrated. It seemed I could no longer hear Shun Hung's thoughts. I couldn't recall when this change occurred, but did it truly matter? We had already established a deep connection. Unable to contain my curiosity, I asked Shun Hung, so, when did you first develop feelings for me? Shun Hung shook his head. I can't quite remember. Perhaps it started during the lollipop incident? He looked at me and suddenly laughed. So it began then, and you liked me all along. I embraced Shun Hung. I felt the same way since that moment. Shun Hung, it turns out we have liked each other all along. In the future, our eyes would only hold one another. The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and give a thumbs up to support. Until we meet again in the next story.